Hello there, b****. Are you comfortable right now? Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded. You are obviously here against your will. For a little while, at least, you need to get your shit together and listen to this tape. Now, I'm going to tell you in detail why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, how long you'll be here. Under the circumstances, I bet that is a scary thought. You are going to be kept in an environment that is even more secure than a prison cell. Here, your status is no more than that of one of the dogs or of one of the animals out in the barn, because, basically, you've been snatched and brought here for us to train and use as a sex slave.
It's hard to imagine the horrors that Cynthia Vigil went through at the hands of the toy box killer. For 3 days, she was chained, violated, and enslaved. But she didn't give up hope. She fought back and managed to escape, leading to the arrest of David Parker Ray, the notorious toy box killer. The audio recording that we heard in the beginning was what Ray made for Cynthia.
Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded.
And I know, it was nothing short of disturbing. It's 50 minutes long and contains evidence that led to his conviction. It's hard to listen to, but it's really important to understand what happened to Cynthia and the other women he preyed on. The most shocking part of this story is that every piece of the puzzle is hidden in plain sight. Kelly Van Cleave and Marie Parker were cases that had left police baffled for years. But thanks to Cynthia's bravery and the evidence gathered from Ray's house, justice was finally served. It's a tragic reminder that there are monsters among us. People like David Parker Ray take pleasure in inflicting pain and suffering on others. It's important to remember the survivors, like Cynthia Vigil, who fight back against these monsters and bring them to justice.
If I killed every that we kidnapped, there'd be bodies strung all over the country.
Has he ever tortured anyone?
No.
Did he kidnap anyone?
No. Excitement from making a woman happy.
But it's not just about the survivors. We must also remember the victims who didn't make it out alive. Kelly Van Cleave and Marie Parker were young women who were taken too soon. Let's take a look at Cynthia's story. Now, Cynthia remembers every detail of her abduction. Cynthia's abduction began innocently enough. She was sitting inside an RV with a man who had been asking for her. At first, the man didn't seem threatening, but something unusual happened that should have raised a red flag. Cynthia noticed that he had given DJ some money out the window, and DJ took off running, leaving her alone with the man. The man and Cynthia talked for a few minutes, and he seemed interested in her line of work. Then, out of nowhere, he took out a handcuff and snapped it onto her wrist. Cynthia panicked and tried to pull away, but the man was too strong. It's hard to imagine the terror she must have felt at that moment. As if that wasn't enough, a woman appeared from behind the shower curtain and shot Cynthia with a cattle prod, knocking her on her knees. The two captors drove off, with Cynthia chained tightly in the back of the RV. Despite being shackled, Cynthia managed to unscrew the cabinet handle she was attached to while the RV was in motion. She planned to hit the door when the vehicle stopped slow enough, but unfortunately, the RV stopped abruptly, sending her rolling to the floor and exposing that she had untied herself. Cynthia was then duct taped and taken outside the RV at gunpoint. Once outside, Cynthia saw other trailer houses all around and hoped that someone would notice her, but nobody did, even though it was broad daylight. She was then taken inside and shackled, with a metal slave collar around her neck, padlocked and chained to the wall. It's hard to imagine the sheer horror of that moment, not knowing what the future held for her. To make matters worse, the captor played a tape of him talking, further instilling fear in Cynthia. The trauma she must have experienced is unimaginable. For 3 days, Cynthia was subjected to unimaginable torture.
You're going to be kept in the hidden slave room. It is relatively soundproof, escape-proof, and it is completely stocked with devices and equipment to satisfy our sexual fetishes and deviations. You haven't seen anything yet.
Her captors would make their bed next to her every night, talking about their twisted plans for their next victim. They even planned on bringing in a young child, she says. But despite the constant torture and fear, something clicked in Cynthia's mind. She knew she had to escape, to stop her captors from ever hurting anyone else again. Now, Cynthia couldn't figure out a way to escape. The woman who was watching her was always nearby, and Cynthia had no way to make any noise without alerting her captor. But then, a stroke of luck. The woman took a phone call and left the keys on the coffee table. Cynthia knew she had to act fast. With the woman still in the other room, Cynthia used all her strength to pull the coffee table closer with just her feet. When she finally got the keys in her hands, she didn't care that her captor was just a few feet away. She had to try every key until she found the one that unlocked the collar from the wall, and when she did, she knew she had to run. Even after being stabbed with a knife, she refused to give up. She fought back with everything she had, using an ice pick to stun her attacker and then running as fast as she could, naked and covered in blood. It's hard to imagine the fear and desperation that Cynthia must have felt during those 3 days.
911. Yes, I'm calling for a young lady that ran into the house and says she's just been raped. She's got her chain on her and everything. Send someone right away. This lady's naked and everything else. She said they've been holding her for 3 days.
Now the woman who was seen in the other room was Jessie Ray, the daughter of David Parker Ray. She was involved in the abduction of Kelly. She drugged her and drove her to her father's house, where she was then subjected to unspeakable horrors. What makes this even more chilling is that David himself was the park ranger who brought Kelly back home when she initially disappeared. Kelly's disappearance was eerily similar to that of Marie Parker, and it wasn't long before the FBI reopened her case. Their investigation led them to Roy Yancey, who had a history of kidnapping, torturing, and killing women. When Roy was interrogated, he confessed everything. He revealed that he had been instructed to kill Marie Parker, and the idea had come from none other than David Parker Ray himself. Roy was threatened with his life if he ever spoke about it, and David was the one who had given him these threats. Now, when the police arrived, Cynthia found it hard to trust the police. Her abductor had worn a similar uniform, and she was afraid that they might not believe her story. But a state cop arrived at the scene and promised to keep her safe. Even when he was off duty, he stayed by her side, offering her comfort and support. It's moments like these that restore our faith in humanity. It wasn't long after Cynthia was taken to the hospital that her captors were intercepted trying to flee in their RV. The FBI executed a search warrant on their residence and discovered a converted rider truck off the main trailer. Inside, they found a videotape of a woman being held captive in the toy box, a torture chamber. The woman had a particular tattoo on her leg, which was broadcast on national news. Kelly Van Cleave then came forward and identified herself as the person in the video. She had been missing for 3 years and her family had been searching for her. The torture chamber held many other secrets and was responsible for countless atrocities. David Parker Ray, the man responsible for these heinous crimes, claimed that Kelly was a willing participant. However, it's unclear what really happened to her and Marie Parker. Now, even though they found Cynthia, Marie Parker's body still remains missing, but her family can finally have some closure now that justice has been served. Cynthia and Kelly had to face her attacker and his girlfriend Cindy in court. It was a difficult and emotional experience, but they did it to ensure that no other woman would have to go through what they did. David Parker Ray had several accomplices who pled guilty to their crimes. Eventually, Ray himself was brought to justice and given a maximum sentence of 224 years in prison. But even this could not repair the damage that he had done. Cynthia and Kelly's lives were forever changed by the trauma they experienced. On the one hand, we can be happy that he's no longer a threat to anyone. But on the other hand, we couldn't help but feel sad for the families of those who are still missing. What happened to them? Where are their bodies? It's been more than 30 years since Cynthia's escape, but she still carries the weight of her trauma. However, instead of letting it consume her, she has become a beacon of hope for other women who have been through similar experiences. She started a non-profit organization called Safe Street New Mexico, which provides resources and support for women who have been raped, trafficked, or attacked. Her incredible courage and strength have inspired many. Anyway, this is the story of Cynthia Vigil, and this is what she had to go through.